Welcome back, everyone, to Strange Planet Podcast. And in this week's episode, we're going to be covering a variety of topics. But I guess first off, it took 3 good weeks, but the Republicans finally managed to get a Speaker of the House. His name is Mike Johnson of Louisiana. And later on in this episode, we will also be talking about how more co-conspirators of Trump, the long list, rather, of plea deals is growing. So before we get into all this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. And let's get this started. I guess we're going to start off talking about the new House Speaker, the Republican House Speaker, Mike Johnson of Louisiana.
All right. Well, this guy, Mike Johnson, he is a constitutional lawyer prior to becoming representative of Louisiana. He is most infamous for writing a legal brief in support of Trump's argument that the election should be overturned. I'm not sure that's the greatest idea to have someone who wanted to overturn a democratic election in charge of the same legislative body that is in charge of certifying the next election. So stay tuned for interesting developments there. But we're a while away until the 2024 elections and the certification of them. So this whole turmoil in the House is the result of war going on within the Republican Party. And it's a war for control between, I guess, more traditional Republicans who are not many in number, and this whole Trump loyalist wing of the party who is just very, basically they don't believe in democracy. To overturn an election that the people went out and voted and participated in the democratic process, for someone to be in charge of the House who opposed the people's choice for president, I think is just abhorrent. But, in his job as speaker, it's going to be a rough time for him, I think, because he may have some, a grace period, but I believe that the same issues that plagued Kevin McCarthy are going to be visiting him. He's going to be under a lot of pressure from Trump and a lot of Trump loyalists and the extremist elements of the party, of which he is, well, looks of it, certainly among those ranks. And that's not good for more moderate voices in the Republican Party who I think are disappearing, by the year.
So basically, with this new House Speaker, Mike Johnson here, we're basically looking at another Trump suckler.
Yeah, he certainly, for someone to, in 2023, to still be debating the results of the 2020 election, I think that is where the Republican Party is right now. And if that's who they choose to represent them, then, it's essentially reflective of the mindset of the party.
Yeah, that's actually very true. But if you think about it, a lot of Republicans in general are always very trapped in the past. Because before this, remember, it was Hillary's emails for like 7 years, it felt like. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is just the next situation here, where now, like you just said, it's been, 3 years already, and we're still talking about the election fraud, which there wasn't.
Yeah, and, he is going to be in a very tough position because he's going to have to placate Trump, who endorsed him for the speakership. He's going to have to placate some of the more moderates in the party, or maybe he won't, because maybe they'll be gone by the next election cycle. That's why, Liz Cheney is gone now. And Mitt Romney, who's in the Senate, is retiring. Actually, I've been reading not his book, but he had a biographer write a book. It's called A Reckoning. And in it, he sort of gives his thoughts on, how the Republican Party has essentially, abandoned traditional conservative principles and has just gone after, they've become, essentially lapdogs for Trump and Trumpism, and they're anti-democratic. And he knows that some of them know better. Behind closed doors, they will say that Trump is wrong, but they're just, they don't have any sort of moral principles that would guide them to stand up to Trump. And, if you asked me like a decade ago whether Mitt Romney was, a man of integrity and standing up for moral principles, I would have laughed. He has really demonstrated himself, to be a very respectable person, and he has sort of had a reckoning with himself, and he's certainly, it's a shame that he won't be serving in the Senate anymore, but it's rare that someone stands up to their party in both parties, but especially in the Republican Party where dissent isn't really tolerated.
So in other words, with Johnson now, basically you can kind of say the circus is going to continue, but the pressure and the heat is on.
I think that given this guy's track record, that we're looking to see a very colorful rest of the year up to the election, because doesn't he have power of won't he have power to start doing things with the investigations, or trying to at least?
Well, the Republicans already have the power to run the committees how they see fit. They can put whoever they want on the committees, and you have Jim Jordan on Judiciary there, and they already have the power to subpoena whoever they want. Although Republicans don't necessarily believe in obeying congressional subpoenas, but like Jim Jordan,
can't they do I guess false investigations, or investigations like wild goose chases into Jack Smith's cases to prolong, the indictments, and kind of give Trump a little more breathing room to get to the election? I mean, I feel like
sure. As Speaker, he can convene a committee to investigate, whoever he wants, whether it's Joe Biden or Jack Smith or Fani Willis, or anyone that he desires to deter from pursuing justice. So yeah, as Speaker, he does have that power to convene committees, but it's not like the Republicans weren't doing it already. Remember before the speakership crisis, you had, instead of worrying about choosing a new speaker, you had, the Judiciary Committee under Jim Jordan conducting an investigation into Hunter Biden and holding hearings about that, instead of, making sure that the House continued to have a leader.
Right. Anything to distract, you know what I mean?
So yeah, I mean, it's not going to be surprising if we see more investigations of people they deem a threat to Trump.
That's the sad part about this whole discussion, because we're talking a threat to Trump. This is a country. You know what I mean? Like, this is so abnormal, this behavior and the way this cult is. The Republican Party right now is basically just a Trump cult. That's what's happening. You know what I mean? There's just no other way to look at it at this point. Like, this man ruined the whole party and now controls the whole party pretty much. It's like he's the puppeteer. And the funny thing is he's losing lawyers, and there's so many plea deals against these, what do you call it, election fraud cases. it's just like, how much more proof do you need? Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, so I guess we'll pivot to talking about some of the plea deals that have definitely thrown a wrench into Trump's claims that, the election was fraud and the
Rigged.
election was rigged and that he really won the election. So last week we had Kenneth Chesborough and Powell. I forget her first name. Sidney Powell.
Yeah.
They struck plea deals very, very favorable to them, I think, for participating in trying to overturn a democratic election. They got off pretty light. So, they're granted immunity in exchange for providing testimony against Trump in the Georgia case. And now, earlier this week, another attorney joined their ranks in terms of striking a plea deal. Jenna Ellis, I believe her name is.
Yep.
She also got a very favorable plea deal in terms of, she has to pay about $5,000, only $5,000. She has to do 100 hours of community service and has to be on probation for 5 years. That's a lot better than the prison time she deserved.
Right.
And, she had this tearful plea in front of the judge where she said, she should have done her due diligence and that was what she did wrong. When no, actually, there were a lot of people who knew that Trump's whole charade was a fraud. She said that, if she knew before what she knows now, she would have never represented Trump. Well, there were plenty of people who knew that Trump's election claims were fraudulent and they had no basis in fact or reality.
Right.
And she chose to continue, being his lawyer and continue to lie for him. And that's what she's in trouble for, not for not doing her due diligence, but for lying. And, I think that, so, in these kind of RICO cases, you need some of the co-conspirators to flip because they're going to provide you with the essential evidence needed to convict the people at the top. Now, what we need to talk about is Mark Meadows, who also struck a deal. He's also a co-conspirator in the Georgia case, but he struck a deal reportedly with Jack Smith, who is in charge of the federal case that involves the January 6th insurrection. And so this is my problem with this. Okay, we need someone to provide testimony, and there's probably no one better than Mark Meadows, who was his chief of staff, because he was in the room with him during many of the conversations at issue, when he made the call to the Georgia governor, when he made calls, and he personally made calls to members of Congress trying to perpetrate this fraud in terms of saying that the election was won by Trump. So here's my problem with it. He knows better as a former member of Congress. He was the ranking member of the Congressional Oversight Committee, the House Oversight Committee. And the House Oversight Committee is all about, ethics and rules and, investigating wrongdoing in government.
Oh, boy.
So the House Oversight Committee oversees all of the, executive branch agencies and also would be in charge of, sort of investigating the executive. So he knows better in terms of what he did to help Trump perpetrate this fraud on the country. He wrote a book and he profited off of selling this lie to, parroting Trump, basically saying that, the election was stolen from Trump. And now he's cut a deal with Jack Smith. And he says, you know what? All of that I was saying about, Trump having the election stolen from him, that was, I was lying then. I was lying. And here's what really happened. I told Trump the night of the election that he lost. And I continued to tell him that afterwards. And I, when Trump would say he won, I would say no. But that's not what he told the American public. And that's not what he told other officials, both, in state government and in Congress. He was out there selling Trump's lie.
Yeah.
And for him to not face the consequences of his actions, it's just very hard to swallow. And I understand the need for this in terms of gaining valuable testimony that can be used against Trump. But there's also, justice not being administered to someone who not just should have known better, but he knew better.
Yeah.
And it's shameful, and that needs to be said. Like, he should not get to go home, with his head hung high. No, he should be ashamed of himself for what he did to our country.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, he tried to play both sides of the coin. Before he wrote the book, he was on that side, spreading more lies, almost like it was trying to see how far he could get with it or whatnot. And then when the whole ship started sinking and it was failing because obviously there was no election fraud because it didn't happen, now all of a sudden, now he's going to play the other side of the coin. You know what I mean? And like you said, it's imperative that he does because we do need his testimony and it's going to be important in fighting Trump. But you're right. At the same time, there should be still something there or some kind of penalization because like that's like a ridiculous amount of fraud and lies that you literally profited off of.
Well, I mean, he's still got to face the music at some point. But what we can get from him to hopefully take down Trump is going to be very vital. If he ends up getting elected again, I don't know if the United States is going to be able to call itself a democracy anymore. I
don't even want to say I highly doubt that'll happen, but I really hope it doesn't happen because you could be right there. It's as sad as it may be because this is something we haven't really seen to this extent before. And I just never seen so many people mindlessly following someone that could honestly give no shits about him, period. You know what I mean? And here we are. And we'd think after all these confessions coming out and all these plea deals coming out and, people turning their back and stuff, you would think these would be wake up calls and be like, wow, this guy was full of shit the whole time. I mean, we knew this for years. It's no surprise to us. But no, apparently some people just got that one track mind. And even if it's wrong, they still somehow see it as right, even though they're really just spiting themselves in the end. I don't know. I can't really call it. And that's why I can't really understand the mind of a Trump supporter to its entirety, because I've just never seen someone screw you over so much. And yet you still stay on that bandwagon. Like, I don't get it. Maybe it's a lack of education in this country. I don't know. There's something's off though.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I don't know. It's just people are just desperate in this country for change. It's just they're looking at the wrong kind of change.
You got that right. Because like we're heading to fascist territory if we do something like that, and that's not the answer.
I think a lot of people are in this very myopic and self-destructive mindset where, if they don't get their way, they're going to burn the whole place down.
Yeah. And that's what it sounds like.
That is a very fascist oriented mindset where you better give us power or we'll burn your house down.
Right.
Nothing can work in government unless it's our way.
And the thing that blows my mind, once again, I'll even repeat it about it, is like you said, they, if they can't have their way and they can't have Trump. he's done nothing for these people. I mean, if you were a millionaire or something, you got a nice, you got a nice handout, but like nothing happened. Like I can't even explain that any better.
No. He does give them something. He gives them hope, and he gives them a voice in terms of vengeance against, people who they think are responsible for their miserable lives.
I mean, that sounds about right too. But if you think about it, we're also talking about a con man here who's been nothing but a dirtbag his whole life, long before he was president. You know what I'm saying? And like,
they don't care. He's their dirtbag.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Con man, and he's representing their interests in terms of attacking people that they don't like.
Right.
And then who they blame for their own miserable circumstances.
And the funny part, even more enough, is that this guy's been even cheating his own country with his fraudulent bank claims and his property values and everything else. So it's like this guy's screwing up literally in every direction possible. You know what I mean? And also being a con man almost in every direction possible. And it's like they just don't care. Yep. Like it's just nothing. You know what I mean? All of his promises, remember back in 2016, healthcare and infrastructure and all this, you got none of it. None of it happened. It wasn't even thought about once he became president. Like it wasn't even on the agenda, clearly. It's crazy, man.
What people fail to realize is not that they fail to realize, it's just they're ignoring the fact that Trump is not a presidential person. He is a businessman.
Barely even that, to be honest.
Yeah, no, he's a terrible businessman. He's like one of the shystiest businessmen you'd ever be able to deal with. And he's trying to take that and apply it to government politics, and this is what we're getting out of it. It's and
think about it too. Like he's had more opportunities than most people will ever have because of his family wealth he inherited too. So like when an average Joe would have started a business or something like that, and God forbid it failed for whatever case, that would probably be the end period. It's very hard to come back from something like that. This guy's had failed hotels. He's had failed vodkas, failed airports, failed steaks, like you name it. You know what I mean? Like he's failed at almost every corner you can possibly think of, including the presidency. Because I used to say George Bush was the worst president we ever had, Jr. And he's been top now. I definitely think Trump is definitely the worst president this country has ever seen to date. And I hope it doesn't get any worse than this, because spin back the clock, years ago, I used to say the same thing about Bush, and I was like, I don't think anybody's going to be any worse than this guy. And lo and behold, 2016 rolls around, and then here comes Trump, and wow, yeah, I guess I was definitely wrong on that one. That's for sure. Unbelievable, man.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, like it's just, and like Rook was saying before, there's just no altering the minds of some of these people, because they just, whether they value the bullshit he spews, the lies he does, or if it's sometimes a blatant racism, maybe it's all of it. I don't know, but all I know is it's wrong. That's the bottom line. And this country needs to start seeing some more right being done. You're not going to get that with Trump. It's just not going to happen.
Country better wake up, otherwise they're going to find themselves in like a poor version of Russia.
Yeah, and like, is Biden the best president in the world? Probably not. He falls off bikes and does, crazy stuff once in a while. But am I ever once worried about whose side he's on? No. I know he's for America. You know what I mean? I know he's our leader. He won fairly. There's no question about that. And to tell you the truth, granted the circumstances, I don't think he did that bad of a job so far. And he's still got another year left or so, maybe some change. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. I feel a little bit more secure with him there than definitely Trump. I would probably.
Yeah, I would say a lot more secure.
Yeah, actually, that was probably misphrased. I would say a lot more secure.
I did not feel secure any day of Trump's 4-year presidency.
At all. Yeah, at all. That's a fact there. You know what I mean? So like, if you were given, even if it is this, when it comes time for it in 2024, if the ballot literally is like a repeat and it's Trump and Biden, then that should be a no-brainer, you would think. Biden is definitely the safest bet. I don't care if he's 150 years old, he's still the better decision out of the two. There's no way that like I can see otherwise. Because you have to also factor in too the reason why some of the stuff along the way, even to where we are now in these 3 years we've seen so far, the reason why we haven't seen strong of moves is because the Republicans are blocking a lot of the stuff that was included in some of these bills. So if that's the case, they can't get passed. So it's not Biden's fault. It's not the Democrats' fault for that. I feel like a lot of the blame in this country when shit hits the fan is always aimed in the wrong direction. We're always yelling at the wrong guy, or if you watch Fox News, that's just Christ, that's just a circus at this point. But that isn't helping the situation either. To move forward, we can't keep dragging our feet with all this bullshit from the past. And that's all we've been doing. Hillary's emails, election fraud, everything from years ago. You know what I mean? It's all bullshit.
Well, I mean, Republicans really don't have a legislative agenda. They got what they wanted in terms of, getting Roe v. Wade overturned. And so now they really have no agenda. I guess if they are back in the White House, they'll just, ask for another tax cut. But aside from that, they really don't have plans for the future. This is a party about vengeance and grievance. They're just very aggrieved by their sort of place in society, and they're angry, and they just want to, if they can't be happy, then they're going to make everyone else miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, and their actions literally prove what you just said. Another thing I've noticed over the years, too, when it comes to Democrats and Republicans, seems like Democrats are definitely more involved with the actual people of America when it comes down to it, like labor unions and stuff like that. And generally trying to help the populace in more ways than none. You know what I mean? But when it comes to Republicans, I feel like they're more focused on property and value of things. And they don't care about those kind of things as much. It's all about money. It's all about what can we get out of it, and small government aspect with few people. You know what I mean? So like those are two very different coins, but which side which side do you think is really going to benefit you knowing that?
I mean, yeah, I'll just close with this. As we're going forward, this country is going to face, a test in terms of whether it wants to continue to be a democracy or whether it descends into fascism. As Mitt Romney stated in the biography that just came out about him, he realized that the Republican Party no longer believes in democracy. And that's a fundamental principle of what this country is about. It's about, the people's right and freedom to choose their leadership. And when you have one party who's not willing to accept the results of an election and are willing to commit fraudulent acts and even violence, and to defend that violence in order to try to retain or to gain power, that sort of force or movement in the country is not going to go away. We saw it emerging. We saw the original craziness emerging with the Tea Party, but now it has morphed into full-blown fascism.
Yeah.
And they just don't believe that even if they don't have facts on their side, even if they don't have the support in terms of voting, they are willing to do whatever it takes to win. And by win, I mean actually steal the election. That's what they tried to do. They accused Democrats and Biden of stealing the election, but that's actually what they tried to do.
That's the big facts.
Let's not forget about that.
Yeah.
Like, people went out and voted, and at the end of the day, Biden had more wins in electoral votes. Trump tried to send fake electors to disenfranchise people in different states who voted for one candidate, Biden. He tried to send fake electors to certify that Trump had won those states. That is anti-democratic. That is fascist. And I mean, for people to continue to support Trump, well, then you're a fascist too.
Basically, and you're not going to like it once you're in it. And the funny thing about Trump and con men in general too is anytime they're blowing the whistle and saying, oh, there's fraud here or this is wrong there, almost 9 out of 10 times or 10 out of 10 times, I would say, the person saying it is the one doing it. And that's exactly the case here. Trump's trying to call fraud on the election. He's the one literally doing it as we speak to this day still. You know, so it's like some of it is not hidden. It's right in the obvious in front of you. And that's our show for this week. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell icon for notifications. Strange Planet will have new episodes on YouTube every Friday. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.